well, good afternoon and welcome to the Digital Citizenship Conference. This title is called Teaching Students How to Post in an Authentic Manner to Tell a Balanced Story, aka not in a way that's fake, but in a way that they have fun, teaching them how to be a vibrant online person, which I'm really excited about. The goal here is to teach students and parents that social media really can be good once your child is wise enough to be online. What are the tools we use? How do we talk to them about it? And how are others searching and how are others viewing our students? That's really the success that I want to see come out of this, if I may. And I'm tapping all of you, your expertise. Even from a police department, there's a lot of employment tips that you're going to see from Tim here, which I think is exciting. So first of all, I want to ask, what are some best practices? And I want to dive in deep. First of all, with Mandy. Mandy, you say that avoiding arguing online at all costs, and if you see an argument coming, calm down with something funny or respectful and take it from there. Can you talk to us more about that?
I think what we've seen, especially I'll say just in the last 6 months or so, is a lot of opinions coming out online. So this is just in general, parents, teens, anybody sharing their thoughts. And what seems to happen is if you end up getting into a confrontation on a social media platform, on Twitter or Facebook or something, it rarely ends well. What you typically see is just an argument, and it may create a thread, and then you have 20,000 comments of people just voicing their opinions, and really nothing positive truly comes from that. If you're talking about wanting to be authentic and having a really positive online identity, and having people get used to seeing you online and appreciating your content and having respect for you as a person, you don't want to become really argumentative. If you post something and somebody else comments, maybe they say something that voices a different opinion, I think the greatest way to handle that is almost just shutting it down with a nice polite comment like, that's a very interesting perspective, I will definitely look into that further. Or even sometimes you can call them out a little bit and say, hey, that is great, can you tell me what your source was for that? I would really like to explore that more. Just something that sort of ends the conversation politely so that they're not tempted to then just fight back with you about their point, because really we're talking about different perspectives.
Yeah, and I like how you said, that's awesome. Also, you've inspired me to research that further, you said, which I think is a really great thing. I like how you're keeping the peace light, bright, and polite right there. All right, Ryan Oliver, we're over to you. You talk about teaching students how to create online portfolios and then also integrating online portfolios. Can you talk to us about that best practice?
What our approach is to try to break down some of the walls that have been created around students being forced through fairly uninteresting curriculum or projects in school, where their academic self is kind of forced into a box that doesn't feel like an authentic, passion-driven interest self. And so then that self gets expressed often in social media, online at least, and so that's where passions and interests come out, and relationships are really fostered. And so what we're doing at PeerSpring is trying to bring together in a safe, directed way a platform for students to take on real challenges and pursue their passions and interests in a way that allows them to bring that self out and to integrate their intellectual self with their personal and relational
Can you be specific? I'm going to hold all of you accountable to be specific, because people are watching the video. No buzzwords allowed. I like you, but I will give a specific example. Sure. I'm here to be tough. I'm also your cheerleader. Give us a specific example of a student that might be using that, or a way they're using it.
So one student who I know very well, I'll just use his first name, Milton, is an entrepreneurship student that I worked with in Boston. So he has a really deep love for art. But that isn't something that is always well expressed in a classroom. But through taking on an entrepreneurial project and actually developing a business with friends, becoming the CEO of that business that is an arts-based business, he then can showcase the products that he's created and sold, and also present speeches that he's given, pitches that he's made through different competitions in a way that makes him more attractive to colleges, but also gives him a place to showcase his true self.
That's awesome. An online portfolio. That's great, using art. All right, Sarah, you talk about it's best if parents can serve the role of mentoring novice users, and but any adult can help with this. Talk to us a little bit more about that.
When you're teaching your kid how to drive, which I think strikes fear in most parents of 15-and-a-half-year-olds, but you are in the car with them without anybody else. You're in a empty parking lot, and it's like, this is dedicated time to really learn how to do this. And so, I mean, can you imagine a world where parents are helping kids create their first posts? Can you imagine it? And there's all kinds of things that ramp up to that before you get to Instagram. You know, for us, it's like the Lego site had a joke contest. So I sat with my son. Let's talk about it. No, let's not say that, because someone might misconstrue what that joke is about, you know, and you're helping them, and you're intentionally helping them understand this is how you communicate online. So it's not so reactive, but really proactive. And then modeling that for them once they are fully online, asking them, you know, can I post this picture of you? Is that okay with you? And really helping them to understand just sort of what the boundaries are online, because when they're 13 and they're getting a new account or whatever, they don't know those things yet.
Yeah.
So just being intentional.
That's good. Probably also modeling good posts, because your kids grow up driving like their parents. If you yell and scream at the other person,
100%.
You're going to model that driving behavior, right? Talk to us about, this is kind of my favorite thing to talk about. Admissions and hiring managers will look at your social media to get an idea of who you are, and you represent an organization at college. Can you talk to us about how that works and what you suggest students should use? And in fact, do you have any case studies being really specific? Like, here's a student that we found that maybe their grades weren't super great, but they were giving back, and we discovered it online, and we brought them in because of it.
I work primarily in a graduate program right now, and we have a really comprehensive application process, but we've had people who have given us pointers to their social media sites, and found some really amazing things, like people who have founded nonprofit organizations as undergrads, and have developed a staff and have developed an international presence. Our program looks a lot at global organizations and how to motivate and keep employees engaged in those type of organizations. And so we see people who've had a lot of international travel experience, doing service projects, doing nonprofit work, and that's really, really interesting, and another piece of information that we can take forward to an admissions committee and say, you know, okay, so maybe the grades were a little lower, or maybe the test score was a little off, but here's this person who has real-world hands-on experience doing these kinds of activities, and it's really exciting for us to make a case and have that person come into our program.
That is the only way I got into college, is that right there. All right, now you brought up something really, really interesting. You said they gave us pointers to their social sites. Does that mean in their application they said, here's my Instagram?
On their resume,
Great.
They actually listed, here's my LinkedIn, follow me on Twitter, here's my Instagram, here's my Facebook.
Because a lot of parents and people that are watching this right now are saying, when you Google my kid, celebrities come up, bad people come up, these people come up. And we're always telling students, and you guys are probably, you're the experts, put your Instagram, your LinkedIn, make it not only easy for them to find you online by using the same image across all your networks, but also you're saying students are being smart and saying, here's me on LinkedIn, let me save you the time.
Yeah,
so you can find the real me.
Yeah, for example, if a student were named John Lee, well, you know, that's going to be probably like 3,000 people that are going to come up, and so you don't really know which one it is. So it really is helpful to have the actual address, the actual Twitter handle, the actual Instagram account, so that we can find you easily, and then take a look at the things that you've posted and what you're doing.
As an employer, I have a couple employees, and we actually we say, please list out the social media profiles you'd like us to look through. If they don't list anything, we wonder, because we're in a tech business, and people that do list them out and they're silly online, we trust them more. We're like, yeah, you're silly, you're in your 20s, that's fine. You should be vibrant and silly, as long as you're positive and full of gratitude. And we hired a person that's in there that listed them all out. We trusted them more, and I love to hear that colleges like that too. What do you think is a great way that students can post in an authentic manner?
That's the biggest challenge is not what you post, it's your reaction to other people. And by managing a police department's Facebook page, we post something and then the comments are in the hundreds. And we don't let our comments go. We go on there and we monitor, we hide, we don't delete, we never delete, but we respond when appropriate, and we have to be careful when we respond. But what happens, what I found is, it's a very unique thing, is that we've built such a good reputation online that I don't have to do anything most of the time. Someone will post something negative about us or the department, and the wolves just circle them, and the public takes care of all the comments. And a lot of people will delete their own comments because they've got such a negative reaction from the people. And I think that kind of goes towards anybody's social media account. The reputation you build, and I like what you said about you want kids to be kids. You expect a teenager to. I mean, I see stuff on my son's account sometimes. I go, why did you post? It's a dark video of somebody screaming. I don't know what it is. It doesn't make any sense to me. But all his friends, they make comments and they love it because they know who it is and they know the context and everything. So I think it's important that they get stuff out there that's important to them. They highlight their attributes that are positive. Do they play musical instruments? Are they involved in sports? Are they involved in civic activity, volunteer activity? All that stuff should go on there. I also think the big element that we miss a lot is they really should be encouraged to highlight their families, their siblings, their mom and dad. I mean, you don't see that very often, but I think if I'm an employer and I'm taking a chance on somebody, I want to know that seeing their family interaction is going to be important to me.
Back over to Ryan. Ryan, you had a lot of tips on what new tools or techniques can people use in this segment, and you had for students and families and for schools and families, a bunch of different stuff. You talked a little bit about Coalition for College Access. Talk to us about a couple of those tools and maybe your favorite 2 or 3.
I'm excited that more schools are encouraging alternative applications. I think that it's one thing to say we want K-12 education to change, but at the end of the day, high schools in particular are very much driven by what colleges are looking for. Yeah. And it's harder to give an authentic picture of who you are when the measure of how you're judged is by grades and test scores.
Right.
And so more and more, I think colleges are recognizing that there's inequity in that. There's a lot of gaming of the testing system. So the Coalition for Access and Equity, I think, is a powerful statement. We don't know about how it will go and what impact it'll have, but it's a group of colleges that are well respected saying, we want you to start collecting your best work from 8th grade. And we want the college admissions process to be a long-term process of developing who you are and what your skills are over time with support, rather than a snapshot of what you did in 11th grade.
Is it something that is also outside of class, not just in class? Is that also part of that portfolio?
I believe it should be, and that's where things like ZME, there are some really simple tools.
How do you spell ZME? Let's spell the tool.
ZME is Z-E-E, and I believe it's M-E, .me maybe. But anyway, so that one is sort of like a bare bones. It's almost just like a visual resume almost, right? Where you can upload, people put intro videos of this is me and my family, this is what I like to do in my free time, this is the service work I've done. I think it's a good start. I think it doesn't have the depth. It literally is like my resume with some videos and pictures. So that's a good one. I have seen others that are trying to be a little more complex. I think things like LinkedIn are great for adults. Honestly, in working with teens, it's not that impressive, right? A teen doesn't have a lot to put on LinkedIn, and so therefore I think we need more tools that are built for teens and that are built around their visual digital lives.
Yeah, so Sarah here says that Social Assurity is a tool. which provides social media education. But you said that they report that 80% of students who create LinkedIn profiles and include them in their applications report that someone from the college they're applying to has looked at their profile. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that was just a statistic that I read in preparing for today, and I think that's what makes LinkedIn unique, is you can see. And kids, I mean, sometimes just knowing like, oh, that was worth it, someone looked, is helpful. I also read, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, I don't know very much about it, but another organization called Portfolio Gen that has places where you can upload academic work and non-academic work, and it has a very diversified content tool. So there's, blog posts or speeches or kinds of things that you said. So I think that's really helpful.
Hey, Mary, can you talk to us a little bit more about looking forward? What advice would you give to people? You say develop a persona that is consistent with who you are in real life. Don't fake it. What are some examples of someone faking it?
Having a consistent online profile that's consistent with who you actually are in real life is really important, because I think some of the schools, for undergrad in particular, they require, some of them require interviews, especially for scholarships. And so if they've been looking at your social media and they maybe have seen some stuff that you didn't mark as private, or you just had a public post or something that is or that one of your friends has tagged you in, for example, that wouldn't be an activity that you would want a college admission officer to necessarily see. That doesn't really represent who you are and who you want them to know you as. That it's really important for students, I think, especially for the older teenagers and then for the undergraduate students, to have a consistent idea of what it is that they want to represent in their public-facing social media, like a body of work that you're showing as another part of who you are, of representing yourself. So part of I study authentic leadership in my doctoral program, and part of the authentic leadership framework is to thine own self be true. And so if you know who your own self is and you represent that, just like meeting somebody for the first time, meeting an employer, and you're representing that really fairly in your social media as well, then you're not faking it. Like, you're not pretending to be somebody on social media or pretending to be somebody in person that you really aren't.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah. So we have a really, really great graduate. He's a graduate of the program now, and a little bit kind of rough around the edges, so to speak. So he's a young guy, already had an undergraduate degree. I told this story in the other panel. Came into my social network space that I run for the university and for our program, and was just literally profane. Every other word in his post was something that probably would have been censored, which I pointed out to him that since the dean was in that space, he probably didn't want to represent himself that way. Mm-hmm. And his response to me, the first response to me was, this is just who I am in real life. And my response to him was, if that were true, then you would not have been admitted to my program. So in a way, his social media presence was kind of this big, tough, kind of macho presence of, I want people to understand that I'm tough and don't mess with me, and I'm accomplished and I can say it any way that I want to. And I asked him, I said, would you walk into a boardroom and actually speak this way to the person in the C-suite who has just hired you to do consulting? Mm-hmm. So he had to think about that. And he actually went back online and he apologized to people. He actually, after some months, came back and apologized to me as well. Yeah. And so that was just kind of calling him out and making him aware of, this is not who you really are, even though you're saying to me this is actually who I really am.
And most schools won't do that. They won't actually give you that answer.
Right.
There's a growing number, you say, of small liberal arts colleges that are not accepting test scores, but are doing Google searches on prospective students. Can you speak to us about that?
Sure. I read a statistic recently, and I want to say it was somewhere around 30%, the number is rising. 30% of schools are admitting that they're starting to look at student social media, Googling students, things of that nature. And we're also finding out that more and more, and it is more of the smaller liberal arts schools, probably not the top 100 schools that we all know and hear about, but there's nearly 4,000 colleges in this country, so there's plenty of schools and plenty of options. And I think that what we're hearing is some of those schools are doing away with test scores. They're saying these are not a good reflection of the students that we're admitting, and it paints the wrong picture. So we are just doing away with them, and so many schools students are just submitting their grades, and then now that those institutions are not looking at test scores, they are looking for a broader picture of the student, trying to get to understand what the student is about before they bring them in. One thing that I really like about LinkedIn, it is challenging to get students to use LinkedIn in a prolific way, but one thing that it can do is allow students they can use the work experience section to talk about a lot of different types of experience, I think, but also it's a great way to show what they aspire to. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of there's ways that they can get on there. They can follow people and organizations that interest them. They can connect with, because of course when you're on LinkedIn you can see who other people are connected with. So I think it's also a great networking tool for students, not necessarily to build a network of people that are really close to them like some of these other platforms, but building their own network of people who inspire them that they want to emulate. We've talked a lot today, and I've heard a lot in other panels today about people talking about digital role models, people that we want our students to aspire to be, and that on one hand needs to be us as parents and as educators, but also telling them follow people who interest you in the industry that you are interested in. Yep. I think that's a really great use of LinkedIn for students, even if it's not the best representation of maybe their accomplishments.
Well, one trend that I've seen a lot lately, and maybe you guys can add to it too, but the involvement of political content with kids nowadays is just going crazy, and the available graphics that are out there, they're getting involved in stuff that they really have no idea what it means and the implications, and they're linking things on their social media, linking videos, linking sayings that are derogatory, but they think, and there's so much in the adult world that it's going around so much on social media that the kids are picking up on it, and they're sending it back out to their friends, and they're taking political stances that we've never really had to deal with kids. Yeah. So I think that's a huge thing, is when you talk about your authentic person, I think you can have an authentic profile, and then behind that you can have, a profile that's not you, but you do things, you send things out to people, and that's the danger of when we ask for people's passwords to look at we don't just look at their social media, what's out there on the public, we will ask for their passwords.
As an employer in the police department.
Correct, and it's private industry too. I mean, you'll have employers that will literally turn computer keyboards and monitors around and say, go ahead and log into your accounts for us, and you can refuse, you can say no, but they're doing that for a reason, because they have questions. We do it as a standard. Mm-hmm. We asked for that, and we don't always look at it, but when we do, sometimes that could be. So you have your authentic person on the face, and then what are the direct messages they're sending back and forth? Yeah. What are they pulling off the internet and sharing with their friends that really might show either their true colors or more of a fake self,
Let's talk a little bit about venting. We are always talking to students about, hey, you should have a bad day. What are some tips that you guys have on how to vent other than on your social media? How do you talk to students about that?
I think the general rule for anybody, regardless of age, is don't put it in writing. Yeah. It's fine. I mean, if you really feel, a phone call, you need to emote in some way, I mean, do it. But then also, I think, and this comes from way back from Leadership on the Line, which is a classic kind of leadership book from way back, but is know the difference between your confidants and your allies.
Yes.
Right? So your allies are the people that you might work with and that, you know, you see every day that are kind of part of your organization. Don't vent with those people. Right. Problem solve with them. And then your confidants are the people that are outside of your professional world or your academic world that just care about you, and
your friends.
You can say whatever. You know, you can say anything to them, and they're not gonna. It's not gonna come back to bite you. Hopefully.
I think in a certain degree, it's really okay to make fun of yourself and to have that levity. If we have something something happened in our city, in our police department, that is maybe negative towards us, the first thing we'll do is get on top of it, and we'll fall on our sword. We'll post it online. We'll put that statement out there, and it just takes the wind out of people's sails. You know, that if you're making fun of yourself for putting that out there. So I think I agree with be careful what you put in writing for sure. But you know, you see things on social media, you see posts on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram that are really funny, and it's people making levity of their situation themselves. As long as it's done in taste and there's no, you know, profanity or something like that, I think it's okay.
And we're always teaching students, make fun of anyone as long as it's you. And then also, yeah, it's like you can have any car you want on the line as long as it's black, right, said Henry Ford. Yeah. And then also, it has to have a little bit of positivity and gratitude. Whatever you're sending, does it have one or the other or a combination of both? Let's move on into some bad examples. What are some examples we can use to people to maybe save their reputation?
There was one not that long ago that it was a woman who was getting on a plane to go to Africa, and she posted on her Twitter what she thought was just a funny, haha, sarcastic comment, and I believe it was something to the effect of, I'm getting ready to head to Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, just kidding, I'm white. And that tweet went out. She hopped on a plane, and I don't know how many hours that flight is, but it's a few. 17 hours. So by the time the plane landed, there was a hashtag, and all
trending
over the internet, has Justine landed yet? And it was everybody's comments, thousands and thousands of comments. And Justine basically lost her job and had to go into hiding before she even landed off that plane.
What's even worse, she was the head of PR at Match.com's parent company.
Yes, I did.
And
I knew she was in PR.
She only had 200 followers before that, and she meant it in a nice way. Her family gives back a lot. I don't know her, but she's in my book. The first chapter is How to Lose Your Job, how to damage your life, actually. Very good example. It's called the SACO'd, how to get SACO'd. Any examples that you see in law enforcement that are of either people losing employment, getting in trouble, or having unforeseen consequences?
Countless. Cops have a very unique sense of humor. One officer lost his job by putting flour all over his face and making a comment that, you know, this is what we do on the night shift in the evidence locker. You know, he didn't mean anything by it. It was just a joke, and it was sent to his friends, but nothing's private, and it gets out there. There's a classic tweet by the guy in Silicon Valley who tweeted as he's leaving the major corporation that he just got a job with. Just got hired by this company. Now I gotta weigh a crappy job with the commute of an hour each way. You know, what was I thinking? You know, before he got home, he got a phone call. We no longer need you as an employee. You know, kids get in trouble all the time. Not knowing what they're doing is dangerous or threatening, and they'll make a comment, and it will get to the police, and then we'll scramble and have to. I'm sure you know it with high schools.
Show up on the doorstep
and make sure that no, they're not going to go shoot up the school.
Yeah.
Things that are innocent like that. Kids go from very innocent, never involved in any crime, to all of a sudden they're a suspect in a crime because of something they did online. Right. So it's unfortunately there's example after example.
Yeah.
I think things are getting better in the understanding and you know, maybe even as recent as 5 years ago, people didn't know what an online identity or profile was when it came to colleges and jobs. They didn't even think about that. Now I think it's very widespread out there.
Are there any examples of things that we shouldn't do, or students should not do when applying to their dream school? What are some bad examples of what people are doing?
I'm thinking about some things that I've read about student athletes when they're signing their letter of intent. And so, their number one school hasn't responded yet, and so they decide to stir things up a little bit, and they're trying to obviously get attention from their Division I school that they're looking at by showing themselves prominently displayed wearing colors from another school, like wearing somebody else's sweatshirt, because they're kind of advertising that they're taking their second or third or fourth recruiting trip to somewhere else. And it's similar to, the employer. Then, the D1 school is going to say, well, if you're so in love with this other, this D3 school, then you can go to school there. And so they basically really, really by trying to be funny or trying to get the interest of the other bigger school, really kind of damage their own chances, really kind of shoot themselves in the foot, so to speak, by just kind of publicly displaying, here I am, and, this kind of bravado of, hey, I don't need you, type of thing.
Rather than venting to their friends or family or talking and and planning it out. And you should vent. You should have a bad day. Like, I can't believe they're not calling me back. But is it over coffee or phone call, right?
Yeah.
Don't put it in writing.
Yeah, go see your coach and say, I'm really frustrated because I haven't heard.
And let it out, right? You should be a vibrant student, just is it online?
Exactly.
And is it in a way that's productive and positive?
I think it's important also to point out, and probably have the conversation with teens too, that there's a difference between being authentic and being casual. And your example of your student kind of reminds me of this point, that you can be authentic in who you are online. You can showcase your skills, your talents. You can be light, bright and polite. You can, thank whoever you were with that day, and that is all authentically you. But that is very different than being casual you. And the conversation that you have with a friend over a cocktail in your kitchen is going to be a very different. Well, not teenagers, right? I'm in mom mode. I'm in mom mode now. But even as a teenager, the conversation with your friends that you have in your bedroom is going to be a much different conversation that you would have in front of other people. And something I used to say a lot more, and I'll probably start saying it again, is whenever you post something, you should think about who is somebody that follows you or that you're connected with. You kind of think of who are the top people. And I'm thinking, who are parents or PhDs or law enforcement, or who are some people that are looking at you? And would you say that in front of them, to their face? And if the answer is no, it probably doesn't belong online. So I think that's an important distinction to make, is that being authentic doesn't mean, well, that's just who I am and how I am. That's being just casual. And I think we can be authentically ourselves with different audiences, but still be the same person.
I think it's important to teach kids growth mindset. So kids, a lot of, well, this is just who I am. And a lot of times, just who you are is stuck maybe in some wounds or issues that haven't been resolved in your life. Not to get all, into social worker and psychologist mode, but who you think you are at 14 or 15 may not be actually who you really are. There may be things to uncover. So what we like to talk to, parents and students about is, give yourself room to grow. Don't just make that blanket excuse of this is who I am. This may be who you feel comfortable being. But is there a better version of you that you're still yet to discover? And don't blow up bridges to that better you by being so defiant about this is who I am, because you can grow. And you can become more open-minded, or you can become more understanding of a different viewpoint, and you need to give yourself room to do that. Not
to go down this rabbit hole, I love where you two are going. The better version of you said, I heard that. Be the authentic person that you want to be someday. I'm kind of hearing that, like room to grow. You can be authentic with who you'll be in 5 years, maybe going to dream school. We hear a lot of students not only say, that's just who I am, which is the worst cop-out, ruining yourself, putting a lid on your opportunities. But also, sometimes you'll see students say, no, I want to talk about the political election this way because I'm right and no one's disagreeing with me on my Facebook page. How do you talk to people that way? We as experts know that they're putting a lid, even people that agree with them politically are saying, that person's too outgoing about that. I don't even know if I want them in my organization because they're going to be negative about it, even if I agree with them, right? How do you talk to students about, hey, people aren't agreeing with you online because they want to, the negative people might stay away unless you're a police department. They're not going to fight you as an individual, but so they'll get 3 likes, they'll get a couple positive comments like, you go person. But how do you explain to them that everybody sees it and they'll make a different action in real life based on that, but they may not comment trying to encourage you to change your behaviors?
I mean, I think it gets to what is a deeper challenge that I think as educators we're starting to talk about more, which is how do you develop empathy in a deep way, and how you develop curiosity and creative problem solving, and so that we're approaching things less from a perspective that I'm right, I have the truth, and social media is just one more avenue for me to express it, versus there are, I want to understand others. Yes, I want to communicate who I am, but I also understand that that's in a context, and that by exposing myself to more variety of ideas and perspectives and asking more questions, learning how to ask good questions, that's how we develop. And so I think that's a place that our education system needs to push towards in terms of tips for young people. I think and modeling curiosity. I think a lot of the themes that I've heard in the sessions that I've heard is, as adults, just being more curious and asking more and making less statements and commandments, and more, questions and guiding more and coaching more and dictating less.
And maybe that goes back to teaching your kids how to post in early adoption years of, okay, you're really fired up about this political issue. You're 13. So and the 13-year-olds at my son's school were fired up about things, and they may not even have all the context that we have, but maybe that's where you're building that trust so that you can come alongside your student or students in your sphere and say, okay, so you're really passionate about this, you want to make a statement, let's talk about a couple of different options. Like when you work in the marketing world, as I have for many years, and you want to propose a great headline for this next e-blast, you send your supervisor 10 options. And then they choose, that's the one that says it like I want. So you're teaching your kids there's more than one way to accomplish what your objective is here, and let's talk together about what the most respectful way is going to be so that it doesn't tarnish how people look at you.
I think it's all about context too. You can post an image or a graphic and do nothing else, and you're going to interpret it different than they're going to interpret it, but most of the time it's going to be interpreted in a negative manner. It goes back to, just informing versus engaging, and I think a teenager is able to engage just like we are. So if they were to post the same graphic with a question, or hey, what does everybody think about this? What is it? Did anybody see this speech? What's everybody's opinion? I mean, you're not necessarily throwing it out there to support it on face value, but you're more engaging your audience
curious about
a little
bit
more.
Yeah, I like that because you're using it basically as a learning opportunity. So as a student to put something, and I definitely like seeing either articles or images posted with questions, with an invitation for, hey, what are some thoughts? Because I find that then the comments, the responses are much more welcoming and inviting and supportive. I think other than what you talked about, the learning opportunity and getting people to talk about politics in that sense to open their minds, kind of if you're going to be more of a political advocate, and I'll admit I totally got sucked in this last election. I mean, I was posting stuff too that I probably should go back and maybe take that down. But I think that if you're going to be an advocate, then maybe it's important to tell teenagers that it's not just about posting stuff online. You have to have action to back that advocacy up. So if this is an issue that's important enough to you that you're going to put it out on social media and invite that kind of criticism that comes along with it, you probably want to back it up with some action. And that either means raising funds, getting involved in a local group, starting a local group, but do something more than just being a couch activist.
Yeah.
And engage, because that's also something too. If you want to go into politics as a student, if you like that climate, then you definitely want there to be more substance to your opinions, so that it makes sense where that's coming from.
First of all, I heard the empty parking lot, teaching kids how to drive, parents helping kids make their first posts, like teaching them how to drive. I loved that. We talked a little bit about authentic versus casual, which I think is a very big difference. That's really great. How do you develop empathy, which I think is really neat online. And then ZEE.me, it's a visual resume tool. Obviously, we looked at peerspring.com, your company. Modeling curiosity, I thought was really interesting. And then we talked about a little bit about leadership on the line. You mentioned something else. And then I think there was some great examples of what not to do, what to do, how to get fired, how to get a hashtag under your name, and then also basically how to get your Division I school to say, well, if you're needing that if you're needing our answer now, then it's probably no. If you're that immature about it, which I love. I thought these were some really, really great tips. Any final comments?
If you are interested in politics as a teenager, or you're interested in a certain political topic, it can also make sense to talk about that in the context of what you are interested in. So if you are a student who, I think maybe you mentioned that you had a student who's really interested in art, so maybe there is a political topic that affects him or some of his art, then that would be the correct context to come out with an opinion. And I think that has more value than somebody who's just coming out and talking about their position on something. But to back it up with, well, here from my viewpoint, because this affects me, maybe this affects other people differently, but hear this, I think that has more value than just saying whatever they feel.
And even when I ran for public office many, many years ago, I was really positive, and there were some really mean people, and I kept it positive, and brands asked me to fly to their city after I lost the election and said, can you teach us what you're doing on social? You can be positive and still win, right? And I wasn't inauthentic, I was not fake. I responded to the mean people, but the point is, as you're saying, you can even be in politics and be positive and get caught doing the right things, and it doesn't mean you need to say, oh, we disagree, we're fighting. You can disagree and go, hey, thanks, maybe I'll get your vote someday, sorry. And if I ran again, the mayor made a call, several people made calls many months later, are you gonna run again the next election, the next 2 years? Because they were afraid. They're like, if you do it again, you got so close to the incumbent mayor, and I didn't have to be mean. You don't have to be, I guess that's what we're talking about here, is mean. All right, you guys have been absolutely terrific. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you.
Have a great day.